So my first job was in Wipro Technologies.
Good open source projects that you are looking at or people should know about?
Cloud native AI. So that's something that I've been trying to learn myself.
Is Kubernetes always the solution? Does KodeKloud also run on Kubernetes? Do you think DevOps is a fresher role or is it not? With all the knowledge you have, with all this resources that you have online, if you were to start learning DevOps from scratch, how would you start it? And also, how long will it take for you to get a job?
For your viewers, Nasi, we would like to give a free trial to our platform. So if they go to kodekloud.com/cloudchamp, or if they use a link below, they will be able to get a 1 month free subscription.
Guys, Mumshad is a founder and teacher at KodeKloud, where he teaches Docker, Kubernetes, and other cloud-native technologies to thousands of students. But in this podcast, we don't just talk about DevOps. I ask questions about startups, future of DevOps, role of AI in DevOps, and lot more. So if you are a DevOps engineer or a cloud engineer or even startup founder, make sure to watch this video till the end. If I was you, I would not miss a single second of this video. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Watch it till the end and subscribe to CloudChamp. Let's go.
Hey everyone, welcome to this new video. And in this video, we have amazing guest Mumshad from KodeKloud. Me and Mumshad today are going to talk about Kubernetes, cloud, DevOps, and lot more. Mumshad is the founder of KodeKloud, and everyone in DevOps space might already know about his courses and Mumshad. But I still want Mumshad you to please introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show, Nasi. Really appreciate it. I've seen your platform grow in the past couple of years, so congratulations on all the growth that you've enjoyed. So my name is Mumshad Mannambeth, and I'm, I would say, a teacher. What I really like is simplifying complex topics into easily understandable chunks. And that's what I've been doing for the past 5-6 years. So the initial years, I created a lot of courses on my own, built hands-on experiences on our platform. For the past couple of years, we've been building out KodeKloud. We have a number of other trainers who create other courses as well, and building new learning experiences. I think that's, to me, the most exciting thing. So yeah, that's a quick intro about me.
One of the main reasons why I love KodeKloud and why I would suggest everyone KodeKloud is because of the quality. The first thing is you get to practice what you were studying. I remember starting to learn Kubernetes and Docker from your platform, and you had the labs right inside the course, so there was no need for me to install, which is what I like. And I also suggest people who talk to me on TopMate, I often suggest your courses to them because obviously there's no one else who is doing better in Docker and Kubernetes compared to KodeKloud. But you mentioned you started doing courses on your own before starting KodeKloud, right? How was the journey? How did you started doing courses along with your jobs? How was it?
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed creating content, creating courses. I liked creating presentations. I like, drawing things out and making things simple. And what I used to do while I was working was I used to conduct trainings internally in my organization, especially if there are new joiners who are joining, I would kind of volunteer to train them. And I kind of felt like I would learn a lot when I do that. So one of the main reasons I started teaching was because that would push me to learn by myself. And that's kind of a hack that I used to kind of push myself towards learning new things. So a couple of years before I started KodeKloud, I was learning AWS on Udemy, and I thought, why not create my own courses? So I think I first created a course on Ansible, which was a technology that I worked at that time, and people liked it, and they kept asking me for more content, so I just kept listening to them and creating more and more content. And I guess I did that for a couple of years while I was working. I would create course for a few months and then take a break for a few months and then work on the next course for a few months. So just kept doing that for 2 years. I guess I had about 6-7 courses at that time, but by then I realized things got really overwhelming, and I was also kind of making enough money from the courses that I could now afford to quit my job and do that full time. And so when that time came, I decided to quit my job and start doing that full time because that's what I enjoyed. So yeah, that's a quick journey of how I went.
That's great. You mentioned about teaching other people to learn yourself. This is also something I used to do. When I was in my engineering, we had a subject named M2, and it was quite tough for my friends. I usually hang around with friends who are not good in studies, but I used to teach them, and that also led me to start my first YouTube channel, which is not this one. I was teaching M2 questions on other channel, but then when I started learning AWS, I got my first certification. This is how I started this YouTube channel. So I obviously understand the influence of how you can learn something by teaching them into easier concepts. But tell me about your engineering journey. Did you study in any big tier 1 colleges or tier 3?
Not really. I did my diploma in computer engineering. So I got a job very early in my career, right? So I think just when I turned 18, I got a job. So I did my school and then I did my diploma after. And by the time I finished my diploma, I was 18. And then around that time, I got my first job. So my first job was in Wipro Technologies. I joined as a technical support engineer, supporting storage arrays. So I started my career in the ops side of things, and then over the years, gradually moved into the developer side of things. So I really enjoyed, during my engineering, I really enjoyed programming and coding and creating things. But, when I started my career, the job I got was more on the tech support side. So I did that for a few years, and I would use my skills, like programming skills, to write scripts and automate stuff and things like that. So yeah, that's the earlier days of my career.
So were there terms like, or job roles like DevOps engineers, cloud engineers back then? Or?
Of course not. So this is like almost 20 years ago. Kind of makes me feel old when I say that. But at that time, it was mostly like technical support engineer. There were just developers and then sysadmins, maybe Linux administrators, Windows administrators, network engineers. I guess the DevOps concept is a little bit comparatively newer, maybe 10 years old, right? But yeah, at that time, I had no idea. I was mostly just admin job. I was initially a tech support engineer. Then I moved into more of an ops role, moved into a sysadmin role, and then eventually moved into a developer role.
Right. So I recently saw your post on LinkedIn about KodeKloud being one of the fastest startup in Singapore. And that actually is good because you create good quality content. What do you think about the journey of being a startup owner, or how easy it is, how difficult it is? What problems do you face?
Very interesting question. So when I first started, to be honest, I did not really want to build a startup or, build a company or anything. It was just a side gig something that I did that I enjoyed, but at the same time also kind of make some passive income. So that was my original goal. But then after a couple of years, it got really overwhelming. And then I had a lot of requests coming in, which kind of forced me to quit my job and start the company. And then I realized I could very well do that at that time. So I started the company. So even in the early days of the company, I was like, I would just run it as a one-man team, maybe have a few other folks. But then just the amount of work just kept increasing. It got really overwhelming, like the number of courses we were creating, the requests that was coming in. Then I also really wanted to create new experiences. So not just the content. The content is something I enjoy doing, but I also enjoy building stuff, like creating stuff. So that's where the labs and all of that came to be, right? So when we created the initial versions of the lab, people really liked it. So then we had to really build it up and have a team to continue to build it and support it. So we had to go out and hire developers and hire ops people to come and support that. So that's where I started. Then I realized that I have to start hiring and building a team. So those earlier days were really tough in terms of me having never hired anyone in the past, or not really having management experience prior. I found it really hard to hire those first few folks. I had no idea how to find them, how to interview them, or how to find good people. So yeah, I eventually had a few really good folks join me and really helped me grow in those early days. And then post that, it has been a mix of creating content, building the product, building the company. The past couple of years has been mostly building the team, building different teams within the company. So we are about 100 people now. The past 2 years, we've just almost doubled our numbers. So we went from 1 to 100 in about 5 years time. And that was, to me, it felt like it was pretty fast, and that isn't something that I really thought I would do in the earlier days. But yeah, we've just been going based on the business needs, based on what the community has been demanding of us, and we've just been listening to the community and building what they want.
Yes, I've seen so many courses that you've released recently. I saw you posted on LinkedIn about courses marathon, where you would post about 50 courses, and now you'll be publishing more 50 courses, right? And I also saw a section where you can request a course if it's not there, which is a good. And you're talking about your team. I met most of them, when we met at KubeCon Delhi. I met most of them, Neeraj, Piyush, Kenneth, and I also work with Prabjot, she's in the marketing, I guess. So you've got this amazing team, and you are always there on many conferences. You have booth on KubeCon and many other conferences. So what do you think? Should people attend these conferences? Should a student studying in a college or a professional working in a company should attend these conferences? What benefits do they get?
So the way I look at conferences is personally for me and for our team, it's a way to connect with the community. That's the biggest reason we attend the conferences. We sponsor these conferences for that. So in the past, we were at KubeCon North America. We sponsored the India event, and we're going to be at London in a few months from now. So in the first week of April. KubeCon Europe, yeah. So that's happening in London. So the way I look at conferences is a way to connect with people, right? Connect with the community, listen to them and understand from them what's the next thing that they're looking at, and really gain insights from the community and interact with our students, as well as others, who would be attending the conferences. But that's something we just started doing very recently. But in the earlier days, I used to attend conferences as an attendee. And one of the main reasons I did that was to be part of the community and learn. One of the main reasons was to learn. A lot of these sessions are really valuable. You get a lot of insights. And when you're there and when you're physically there, it's a completely different energy, right? Like listening to the keynotes and the new things. Most of these conferences have announced a lot of new things. That's the venue where new things are announced, and just hearing that firsthand for the first time I feel like that's very inspiring in most cases, right? So usually I found myself like coming back from conferences very inspired with a lot of new ideas and a lot of new things to learn, new things learned from the conference that we can then come back and implement. So one of the reasons, like for example, recently after the KubeCon India event is when we thought, we could run a Kubestronaut cohort, which we started in the first week of Jan. That was something we learned by participating at the KubeCon India event. So there's a lot that we learn from these conferences. And as an individual, I think one of the advantages is to learn and then to network, to meet other people. And I've seen a lot of folks build network connections and eventually land opportunities through these connections. We've hired a number of people ourselves who have joined the community, who have met us, who came to meet us during these community events. And I think that's another big reason to participate in these conferences.
Totally, I agree. Because I've met very good folks through these events. Even I started as an attendee. I remember I attended my first AWS Community Day event in my city, and then I thought this would be very valuable. I should be attending more, meeting more people, connecting more people. So I think obviously it helps. Talking about, is KodeKloud still hiring?
Yeah, we're always hiring. So we do have a number of openings. So if you go to careers.kodekloud.com, you'll see a number of openings in different areas. So yeah,
if anyone is watching this video and would want to check out careers, they can obviously go and visit the KodeKloud website. Now, you mentioned about how conferences can help, and you also contribute a lot in CNCF, the open source area. With all this knowledge, let's say there's my video, which is quite viral, which was how you would start learning DevOps from scratch if you had all the knowledge. So I'll ask you the same question. With all the knowledge you have, with all this resources that you have online, if you were to start learning DevOps from scratch, how would you start it? And also, how long will it take for you to get a job?
Yeah, good question. I think this is probably one of the most frequently asked questions for us, like how do you get started, right? So I would say, I think foundations are always probably the most important thing and the most overlooked thing. So when you learn anything, for that matter. So in case of DevOps, if you look at what DevOps engineers do, what the role demands, ideally, it's a role. So you have developers building applications, right? So you have before that you have the business that has a business requirement, and then the developers take those requirements and they build these applications. And then once they build these applications, the DevOps engineers are responsible for building the infrastructure out where these applications are hosted, making sure they are built the right way, and then setting up CI/CD pipelines for these applications so that you can ship fast and ship reliably, and make sure that everything that's hosted works well, right? So ultimately, the job is really to support the business and support the developers building these applications. So I would go back to the basics of understanding some of the fundamentals of development, right? I think one of the bigger challenges that we have is really people coming to learn DevOps directly and not having the foundations. So just understanding the basics of just programming languages and coding. A lot of people are worried about coding, or a lot of people have this mindset that they don't want to. Yeah. they don't want to get into coding, like it's too complicated, that's not my thing. But what I would suggest is to kind of gain a basic understanding of some of the most popular programming languages, right? This could be Python or Node.js or Java, and just understand how an application built in this platform can be deployed. So if someone gives you the source code of an application, you should have enough knowledge to look at it and say, this is how I can build, package the application, and this is how I can deploy it somewhere. I think that level of knowledge is super necessary. So once you gain that understanding, then you would be able to able to understand everything else about DevOps very easily. So you'll know where it can be hosted. You will know how why it needs to be containerized, how it can be containerized. Otherwise, you're going to run into a lot of issues like writing Docker files or anything for a given application, because we'll have no idea what are the dependencies of the application or how to package or how to run it. How the application works differently in dev environment, the application works differently in a staging or a production environment. So it's built differently in different environments. So gaining a little bit of understanding of that will make it very easy for you to understand everything with DevOps. And then when you get into DevOps, of course, there's like a lot of tools these days, and which people can feel overwhelmed. So I would say start with understanding one tool or learning about one tool that's in one area, like CI/CD. Learn about either GitHub Actions or GitLab CI/CD, GitLab or something like that, to understand how a basic pipeline works. And then once you learn that same knowledge can be applied against all of the other popular technologies, tools that are out there like Jenkins or whatever. Similarly, to containerize it, learn about one of the container solutions, or understand why container orchestration is needed. For hosting purpose, learn about basics of Kubernetes. How is the infrastructure, the underlying infrastructure built? That's where you could probably learn about Terraform or Ansible, tools like that. So if you learn one of these tools in one of these areas, you'd get an overall understanding of the space, and then that will help you get a job in that space, right? So there's a lot of migrations, a lot of effort happening, move into this DevOps space, especially all the older kind of traditional applications are being migrated. So that's why DevOps has kind of gained a lot of popularity in the past decade, and I think that's where there's some opportunity.
Understood. Quite big roadmap, but understood. So if you were to give like just name of the tools, let's say like start with SDLC and then Linux databases. In this way, how would you quickly give a roadmap for a person who does not have much time or does not want to invest much time? Yeah. Maybe you can like recommend them your courses, or you can show them a roadmap.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me share my screen and quickly walk you through maybe one of the basic roadmaps that we have. So if you go to KodeKloud.com and go to the DevOps Engineer learning path, so we actually have a number of learning paths here. So there are some role-based learning paths, and there are some domain-based learning paths. So if you go to the role-based learning paths, we have the DevOps Engineer learning path, and here you can choose like what stage you're in. So like, are you an absolute beginner? Like you don't know anything, then you just select nothing. But if you know the basics of Linux, or you know the basics of containers, or you know basic infrastructure as code concepts, you can select that, and it'll kind of customize the learning path for you. So if you're absolutely new, then I would say start with some of the very foundational knowledge about building applications, right? Like in the past, you had these monolithic applications. Now we're building microservice application. What does that mean, and what does it look like? Like when you build the application, there are some methodologies that go in. There is some framework that developers use to build the application. So that's covered in the 12-factor app. And then there's the DevOps prerequisites course, which is basically will help you learn the basics of everything that I had mentioned about, like basics of Linux, basics of networking. This is basically a crash course into computer science. That's a 6-hour crash course, I would say. Now, DevOps is not just about tools or the technologies that use it. It's about the people and the process, and that's also associated with it, right? So in one of these courses, Michael Forrester, who's one of our trainers, explains to us beautifully how, what are the fundamentals of DevOps. So when you're going to work in an organization, just knowing the tools is not enough. You need to know a little bit more about processes and how to interact with people. And those are some of the things that are covered here. And then, of course, gaining a deeper understanding of system is absolutely necessary, right? So Linux, for that instance, or shell scripting for beginners. Some programming knowledge is helpful. So you could learn one of these, so either Golang or Python. Git, of course, is an absolute must. So for version control, you should absolutely learn the basics of Git. And then we have things like CI/CD tools and containers and container orchestration. So under CI/CD, we have Jenkins, but there's also GitLab and GitHub Actions. So learning one of these would be very helpful. And then for containers, we have Docker. For continuous orchestration, there's Kubernetes. And then for infrastructure as code, there's Terraform. And then there are some of these are what I mentioned, some of the advanced tools, like, for example, GitOps with Argo CD or Istio Service Mesh. These come at a later stage once you cover the absolute basics. So just to give you an idea, if you can spend like 2 hours a day in learning, I know there are a number of tools, but, it would take you about 8 to 9 months. If you spend like 4 hours a day or 6 hours a day, you can do that much sooner. So yeah, this is just one of the resources that we have where you can go and see, kind of plan out your learning path of getting into DevOps.
Understood. This is a complete roadmap. So if anyone wants to understand, they could follow this roadmap and then start their journey from scratch, right? But there's a common problem, and this is very common. Actually, when I started learning DevOps, there was no resource online, right? There were no videos about. There might be few videos from few creators, but not as much as they are today. So, but now people have so many videos, so many courses, so many tutorials to watch, and they're confused and they're actually stuck at a certain video. They just keep on watching, don't actually imply or practice it. So what could you tell them? What advice would you give them for people who are stuck in tutorials?
So I think just the hands-on approach, I guess that's the most important thing, right? So building your own projects would be a very good idea. That way you just don't feel like you're just watching videos, you're actually doing something or building something on your own. So this could be like, building a Kubernetes cluster on your own and then documenting that process, having a GitHub project with, some of that information on there, or, setting up a CI/CD pipeline for a project on GitHub or things like that. So I guess the practice part is super important. So you learn and then you practice that on your own and then document it on GitHub or other places. And then if you're fortunate enough to be at an organization working somewhere where you have the opportunity to work on some real projects, then I obviously volunteer for that and get involved. If you're not, because not everyone is fortunate to have a job where they can practice what they learn, in that case, I would say get involved with open source projects, and there are many ways to do that. So projects like Kubernetes and many other in the ecosystem have everything open, like the project management, the way they run meetings, the way they pick, I would say, collaborate with each other. Everything is open on GitHub. There are meetings around on YouTube. So I would recommend attending some of these meetings to get an idea what are they discussing about. And sometimes there may be small things that they need help with, and they can't, there is nobody to do that. So attending these meetings and then just offering to help, picking up like really small things initially that you're confident that you can do, and then eventually working towards bigger, better projects, and that would automatically get you in connection with the people that are working for different projects. It would get you referrals. So if you are looking for a job change, if you're looking to get a job, that's a good way to get involved with the community, practice what you learn, and then also eventually find a job or get a job in that space.
Very, very true. So anyone who is trying to learn can obviously check out open source and how they can contribute to some projects which can lead them to learn things or get jobs. So this is possible for everyone, right? Like even for students or professionals working in a company, they can contribute to open source. But
Yeah, absolutely.
you would say the starting point for anyone who wants to contribute should be like attending meetings, or what would be the complete scratch roadmap for anyone, like let's say want to learn new things or contribute?
Yeah, so I guess spending enough time learning, I think that's super important, right? Because you want to have the skills to contribute. So you want to make sure you learn and you practice on your own. That's the first thing. But then contributing to open source is not just about contributing in code. There's contribution that can happen in design. There's contribution in just project management. There's contribution in documentation. There's just contribution in developer advocacy. There are many ways that you can contribute. So it's not necessarily coding. So if you're not a coder, you don't have to feel like, you can't contribute. There are other ways too. So then once you have the skills, that I would say you could get involved in some of the projects. Yes, I would say attend the meetings, review all the older meetings that are there on YouTube, and identify the project that you think that you want to be a part of. And then you can start regularly attending the meetings, and then, taking ownership of offering or volunteering to contribute into certain areas. And that would get you through that first step. And then from there on, once you pick things, you'll gain confidence, you'll understand how they work, and then that might open doors for a lot of other things in the future. So a lot of community heroes that we see today, when you go to KubeCon, are people who just went out and volunteered, and it might not always work the first time. So just keep that also in mind. I mean, nothing works the first time. There's something I believe. Sometimes some things take multiple tries. Sometimes you have to try 10 times, but eventually it'll work. Nothing works the first time, but everything works eventually. So you should just keep at it, learn from things that hasn't worked, and continue to do things that work.
Obviously, yeah, most of my friends have got a huge help through open source. Most of them got jobs. Most of them are working in good companies. What are 5 or maybe few good open source projects that you are looking at or people should know about?
If you look at the recent projects, it's usually, there are all of the AI projects that we're all looking at, right? So a number of, be it OpenAI or, Hugging Face or whatever are the newer AI-based projects, those are some things that we're always looking at. But apart from that, one of the things that I've been interested in recently is the cloud native AI. So that's something that I've been trying to learn myself recently. So if you look at it, I've just shared my screen. So if you look at it, so Kubernetes kind of is one of the platforms that's powering a lot of the AI projects out there. Like OpenAI underneath uses Kubernetes, to train their models, and Anthropic uses Kubernetes to train their cloud models and things like that. So the CNCF has come up with a cloud native AI white paper, and if you look into this, it talks about the different projects that are coming in the cloud native space that are focused on AI. So yeah, this is a good read, so I would highly recommend everyone to read it. But if you look at it,
yeah, we will post the link for this. We will post the link for this in the description.
Yes,
this is something new. Even I didn't knew about this. I'm glad you're talking about this. Obviously, I will touch upon AI for DevOps, but please continue.
Yeah. So basically, what this talks about is what's the cloud native AI stack, right? So underneath you have all the GPUs from NVIDIA or whatever the companies you have, and then you have the infrastructure, which could be one of the popular Google Cloud infrastructures. But on top of that, you have the orchestration layer, which is Kubernetes or OpenShift or Docker Swarm. And then on top of that, so on these orchestration models is where you have the data prep the model trainings, the model servings, observability layers, all of that. Then on top of that, you have all the AI workloads like classification workloads, object detection, RAGs, LLMs, vector DBs, all of that. And then the white paper talks about two types of AI. There's the predictive AI, and then there's the generative AI. So generative AI is what predictive AI kind of existed in the past. Like those are more about just the forecasting models or object detection models. Like you look at a picture and identify what that is. So those were the kind of the older, I would say, AI models. But everything that we are experiencing today with ChatGPT and OpenAI and all the abstractions of versions of that are what falls under generative AI. So if you kind of go through this, there are a couple of areas that I want to highlight. So it talks about, the cloud native AI landscape. So you have the cloud native landscape, which is all the tools in the cloud native ecosystem that you're familiar with, right? Which is the kind of the large number of logos that you see on the cloud native side. But here we have the cloud native AI landscape, which focuses on the projects that are within the AI space. So you have the projects that support distributed training, LLM observability, the vector databases, and each of them have kind of their own tools. So there's Kubeflow, which is one of the tools that is a stack that cuts across these different areas. So you have the Kubeflow pipelines, there's MLflow, and then for data science you have PyTorch and other projects. So those are some of the projects that I think everyone should pay attention to. And then there's also this section here that talks about roles, right? So it says in the last 2 decades, we have seen how the tech industry has been creating and changing engineering job roles, right? So we witnessed the rise of roles such as DevOps engineer or SRE engineer and infrastructure engineer. But going forward, what we foresee is the evolution of new roles like ML DevOps engineer or AI engineer, which kind of becomes the glue between data science, infrastructure, and development in the next few months. So looking forward, these are probably some of the roles that we should keep an eye on, right? ML DevOps engineer or AI engineer. Yeah, so it's a good read. I would highly recommend everyone to, just Google Cloud Native AI white paper and go through that, and you'll get a bit of idea.
Actually, something I would definitely read out. So, so you would say people should now take AI seriously and start learning AI because it is going to be used in their Kubernetes workflows or the cloud native workflows, right? Can we expect courses about AI on KodeKloud soon?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already launched a number of courses, right? Just starting with basics of, last year itself, we had launched a course on LangChain delivered by Janek. And then we recently launched, a couple of days back, we launched a course on ML Ops for beginners. So that's one thing that I would highly recommend. And then just today, we launched one on Copilot. So GitHub Copilot, Cursor. So those are some of the courses that are coming up. But this year, we have plans to launch a learning path for AI Ops and ML Ops tracks. So those are some of the things that are going to come up.
Understood. So recently, there are many companies who use Kubernetes, right? Is Kubernetes always the solution? Does KodeKloud also run on Kubernetes?
So not really. I wouldn't say Kubernetes is always the solution. In fact, it would probably be the last. I would say the last solution that I would look at because of the complexity and everything that's associated with it, right? And I personally don't think anyone should start from there. In fact, when we were building the newer version of our platform, which is the learning platform that you see, the original proposal was to run it on Kubernetes, and I actually was the one who was opposed to that because it isn't a complex application. It's just one or two services, and I wouldn't absolutely want to run just a couple of services on a Kubernetes cluster, right? There's already, in one sense, we are running on Kubernetes underneath because we're hosting our applications on platforms like Cloud Run and things like that, which underneath is eventually on Kubernetes, but that is not something that we manage, right? So in that sense, it's still okay. But I wouldn't recommend like building a cluster from scratch and managing it, which is not at all necessary for our use case, right? But as we just spoke about, like the LLM use cases requires Kubernetes. But I would say though, the labs and everything that we run, those are built on Kubernetes. So I'm just trying to show the differences, right? So the labs are a complex part of our system. And that is something we had built from scratch originally. In fact, the first time we built the labs, we did not even run it on Kubernetes. It was run on Docker Swarm. So we actually ran the labs on Docker Swarm for the first few years, just because it was very easy to, set it up and get going. And then very recently, we actually migrated everything to Kubernetes because we actually needed, like we learned the hard way that Docker Swarm was not able to support kind of the workload that we were running. And we were like, labs were failing constantly and things like that. So it needed a system that managed resources more efficiently. And that's why we moved to Kubernetes. So now, yes, we do run on Kubernetes, like labs and everything runs on Kubernetes. But the way I look at choosing a solution is always like, if you're building anything new today, to me, the first option is like, does something already exist? Like, maybe there's a SaaS platform that already exists for a lot of things. Like, for example, if you want to create your own school or something, I would highly recommend using an existing SaaS platform, like the many out there, like Teachable or Kajabi or Thinkific and, the LearnDash and things like that. But that's my first preference. And you can live with that for like a few years until you get to a scale where you decide now you have to move out. So that's what we did. So look for something that already exists, a SaaS platform. That would be my first solution. If that doesn't work out, then look for a no-code platform where you don't have to code or maintain something. If it's simple enough, that's something that you can just drag and drop and put things together, like WordPress, right? WordPress with some plugins. That would be my next solution. If that also does not work, or you run out of these, right? Then I would say you build something from scratch. But then you have to know that that's something that you have to maintain. And then if you're hosting that, I would again go for something like a PaaS, a platform as a service solution, where you just push your code and it just hosts this for you, right? So you don't have to manage, you don't have to look at the maintenance or managing the infrastructure. And then, but if you still need more control, or if you run out of the, functionalities or features of the PaaS, then that's where you look into then starting to run it in containers. But even on containers, I would start with a managed Kubernetes cluster, so you don't have to manage the cluster. And then once you probably run out of that, then you probably, once you run out of all of these options, that's when you should consider Kubernetes or managing your own Kubernetes cluster.
So there are so many options these days. You just need to understand what is your application requiring. So for all CEOs and CTOs like who find Kubernetes as a fancy term, and they want Kubernetes for a simple static website, they need to understand, like, first, what is your application requirement, if you actually require Kubernetes or not, because managing Kubernetes is not easy, right? Like, I work as a freelancer, like I work as a consultant. Most of the time, my client would ask me to set up a simple application on Kubernetes because they heard it somewhere, or they just did a random ChatGPT search where they thought like Kubernetes is very important. Yeah. But as you told us, there are so many options. You need to understand what your application needs, and then according to that, look for the best solution according to your requirement. Now, could you give us some example of how AI is actually used, like generic real industry example on how AI is actually used and how it is helping DevOps engineers or other engineers in the role?
So we're hearing like a lot of different things about AI, right? Like there's this talk about AI going to replace, people, or going to replace developers. That's on the one hand, you have that kind of conversation where everyone thinks AI is going to take our jobs, and AI is going to. I mean, it is in some areas, in some industries, right? Like it probably, I guess, like copywriting and things like that, maybe are a lot of things that can be taken over by AI. Although I still believe that, like, if you have to be really authentic, and if you have a a voice of your own, and that is not something that can be replaced by AI. But like there are things that can be replaced, right? Where, I don't know, if you write things that does not really need to have your voice in it, that does not need to be that authentic, then I guess you can replace things with AI. And so you have, on the one hand, you have people who say like AI is going to take their jobs and who are worried. And on the other hand, you have like actual developers who use AI on a daily basis, who find it, not at all capable of replacing what they do, right? And I think that it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's engineers and developers who use AI effectively can kind of 10x their efficiency, using AI than those who don't use it effectively, right? So I think going forward, like really understanding how to make the best use of AI in making a job easier is going to be critical. So the way I see it is like there's already a lot of efficiency improved with the help of AI. Like writing simple applications or writing simple scripts. At times it can do a much better job than a human. If you give like clear instructions, simple stuff, it can really do well. It's when things get complicated and the context goes out of hand that it starts not working. So I've been personally kind of building things on my own with AI, and I have to say it is like it's made it very. I'm able to do things a lot faster than I would have done before, right? The other thing is like for troubleshooting purposes, like when things break, in the past we would go search on like Google and Stack Overflow and try and find the right solution and try that. But with AI integrated into your development environment, when you feed in the right information and along with the code base, it has this whole context where it can like come up with solutions or tell you exactly what the problem is a lot of times. So that can help like make your work really fast. Like you're no longer troubleshooting things, like simple things for a long time. In that case, it helps. And it also adds to these like seconds and milliseconds of like efficiency. Like while you're coding, it can auto suggest a lot of times, what you plan to do, right? Sometimes it's like scary, the suggestions that it gives, like exactly what you think. It knows what you're thinking and it can like give you suggestions, which is scary, right? So in all that sense, I think it's going to definitely increase the efficiency of people who use AI. But I don't think it's like a complete replacement. Like it's you have to be the driver. Like the person developing the AI needs to know fully like what it's doing and catch it when it makes an error and ask it to fix it. And I think that would be so. Generally, I think it would make our lives easier. And then the other thing is just for educational purpose, right? It makes learning very easy. So you're no longer like stuck with while trying to learn something, you're no longer stuck due to like a small bug or an issue that you just can't figure out, right? That used to happen in the past where we are very eager, we want to learn something, we start learning, and then you just hit a bug or error, and then you're like, I have no idea how to solve this, and then kind of Google, you cannot find out, and then you just give up. Now AI can help a lot in that way. Like you can actually just start with an empty code base, ask AI to write some code for you and explain it to you, and then just interact with the AI and learn a lot in that process. So I think for educational purpose, it does a lot. And so that's why we use it in our own platform. Like we have an AI assistant on our platform, on our lab. So when you are working on the lab, you hit an error, just ask the AI and it can point out to you and tell you exactly what you did wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did check out your AI. But as you mentioned, I use AI a lot, like even for writing mails or to get some brainstorming ideas. AI is helping everywhere. So people should like learn AI. They should not be fearful of AI taking their jobs, right? Now, before we end this podcast, I have some like rapid questions about like common DevOps questions that people ask me or in the comment section. So I just want you to like quickly give answers for them. The first question is, what are important DevOps certifications that people should have if they're working as a DevOps engineer?
So I would say one Linux certification for sure. So this could be Linux Foundation Certified Systems Administrator. So there's the LFCS. Or you could do maybe one of the other popular certifications is Red Hat. So there's the RSCA certification. I think that would really push you to learn the basics of Linux, right? And that's super important. Then I would go for like either a container or container orchestration certification, like Kubernetes seem to be one of the popular certifications out there the past like at least 5-6 years. So that would be my next recommendation. Or you could also look at some of the new ones around GitHub Actions or GitLab. GitHub Actions I would recommend. So that would cover the CI/CD area. So those three could be good solutions.
Do you think, like, if you want to learn DevOps, you should be reading books, or books are not that effective?
Books are always effective. I mean, if you are a reader, if you can read, I would highly recommend books. In fact, there's so much in the books that, to be honest, are not covered in a lot of materials. So I think one of the ways that I learn is by reading books. So I do have a number of DevOps books here. So there's one on a number of books around. So there's the Unicorn project. If you like to learn with a story attached to it, so there's the Unicorn project, the Phoenix project. I think that'll really help you understand in a story format how how work gets done in an organization, how people interact with each other, what do they do when there's a problem, and it uses a real kind of world problem, and that really help you understand how to work in an organization. And there are other books similar to that. There's the Effective DevOps, the DevOps Handbook, and a couple of other books that I would highly recommend, which talks a lot about the things that you wouldn't otherwise learn from other resources. So yeah, I do have maybe a list of like top 2 or 3 books that I would highly recommend anyone to read.
You were saying top 3 books for DevOps would be Unicorn Project, Phoenix Project, and DevOps Handbook.
Yeah, I think that those would be, those would fall into some of my top books.
Understood. If a DevOps engineer wants to learn a programming language, should he choose Python or Golang? One of them.
So if it's just DevOps, I would say Python, right? Because it covers all. It's probably one of the more older, stable projects and more widely used in a lot of different areas. And I also think maybe easier to start. So especially if you're a beginner, it may be easier to start with Python. You probably already have most people have probably learned it during the college days or something, right? So that's probably the easier route, but I guess Golang for more Kubernetes and container specific areas, if you want to write custom operators and things like that, I guess Golang is probably the more popular one.
So mostly when you want to work with like cloud native technologies, Golang is preferred. But
Correct.
Overall, if you want to start with, you can start with Python and then move on to other things. Right. Also, one more thing, freshers often try to get roles or jobs in DevOps.
I don't see why not. I mean, as I mentioned, if you're working in DevOps, you definitely need to have the basic sysadmin, some kind of a systems background, right? Like you need to be good at like working with Linux or any of those systems. But we've had, in fact, we have internally hired like freshers or interns for DevOps. Their job was like from the first day to manage our Kubernetes cluster or our Docker Swarm cluster, and learn containers and work on our labs, help stabilize our labs or test our labs and things like that. So we have hired freshers ourselves for DevOps. So as long as you can learn the underlying concept and you can get the job done, I don't see why not. But I think I do get where the question is coming from, because it's a relatively newer kind of domain that's evolved compared to either the sysadmin or the developer audience in the past. People prefer someone to have some experience in that area, either on the dev side or on the ops side, so that you can then kind of combine that use that knowledge while working as a DevOps engineer. Otherwise, you're going to run into a lot of challenges. You'll not have any idea how to work with code. So when you're given a source code repository, probably won't have any idea what to do with it. Or when you're asked to do something on a server, set something up, you probably won't have any idea how to work on that server. So I guess for that purpose, people prefer candidates to have some experience in either of these areas. But if you can learn all of that and gain some experience following the right learning path, then I don't see why you can't get a job as a fresher.
Absolutely, because this was also the case for me. I started as a DevOps intern and then gradually becoming a DevOps engineer directly from my college, because I had some experience with AWS. I did some projects. I also had some certifications. So I think if you have some certifications, you have some projects done, companies will often give you a chance and they will give you some time to understand the project and maybe contribute later on, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned about Kubernetes certifications, which are very important. And recently there's program named as Kubestronaut. And I'm very active, I'm trying to get the Kubestronaut title. Can you please tell us about what is Kubestronaut, how people can become a Kubestronaut, and more about it for people who are new?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kubestronaut is a title given to those who complete the 5 Kubernetes certifications, right? So the 5 certifications are the CKA, the CKAD, the CKS, and then there's the KCNA and the KCSA certifications. So those are the 5 Kubernetes certifications. And if you gain all those 5 Kubernetes certifications, you become a Kubestronaut and you get a blue jacket from the Linux Foundation. And you'll be featured on the list of Kubestronauts on the CNCF page. So to prepare for the certifications, it's important to understand what are these certifications and kind of in what order you should go. So I've just shared my screen.
All right.
And we can talk about the Kubestronaut Learning path. So obviously, you won't have the basics of containers because you're learning container orchestration tool that is Kubernetes. So it's important that you have the container basics. But once you have that, there are, out of the 5 certifications, 3 of them are hands-on. So all the Kubernetes certifications, 3 of the Kubernetes certifications, the CKA, the CKAD, and CKS are hands-on certifications. So you are, in a room, sharing your screen, using your laptop to connect to a remote system of Kubernetes clusters, and you're actually doing things on that system and proving your skills. So there are about 20 questions that you're going to get asked, and you're going to build stuff out on your laptop for about 2 hours to get certified. So that's the whole idea. So it's very important that you have enough hands-on skills to prepare for the certifications and deliver them. So my recommendation would be, if you're absolutely new to Kubernetes, if you do not have the hands-on experience, so there's the KCNA certification, which is the Kubernetes and Cloud Native Associate certification. It is a theory-based certification, so you're learning about the concepts and then you're giving a multiple choice question exam. So that's the KCNA certification. And then you have the CKA. So CKA is for administrators, so Certified Kubernetes Administrators. This is the most popular certification, and this is something that most people take. It is a hands-on certification, and this is the format I mentioned before, right, where you're connecting to a remote system and you're actually doing things and proving that you have the necessary hands-on skills to be certified as an administrator. And then you have the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer certification. So this is called as CKAD, and this is targeted for developers who are building applications to deploy them on a Kubernetes cluster. So there are some considerations to be made when you build these applications. You are you're following the 12-factor methodology and you're building it in a cloud native way so that it can be run anywhere. It can be containerized and run anywhere. So it would be good for application developers to understand eventually where their application is going to be running so that they can, keep that into consideration while they build these applications. And then you have the KCSA certification, which is a multiple choice exam. So that's focusing on the security side of things. And then there's the CKS certification, which is focusing on that's also on the security side of things. So the CKS is a hands-on exam and similar to CKA and CKAD. And the KCSA is a multiple choice exam. So these are the 5 certifications. And if you go through these and complete the 5 certifications, you will become a Kubestronaut. So what we've been doing is we've started a cohort in Jan where we have about 500 people who have started this journey of becoming a Kubestronaut. We're kind of learning together and, helping each other out and to get certified. So we will be starting another cohort in about April first week. So every quarter we plan to start a new cohort. The thing with this cohort is that we have a leaderboard. So we have as you can see, about 600 people who are going through these certifications. So we have a leaderboard and you can see your progress on the leaderboard as well as others' progress. And you can kind of compare yourself with the others and see where you stand. And this kind of builds like a healthy competition where you're trying to move up the ranks by making more progress in the course and completing and getting certified. And eventually everyone who gets certified will be kind of listed here. Everyone who's become a Kubestronaut will be listed here. So this cohort for now is closed, but we are opening another one in April. It's free for anyone to join. But the course content is on KodeKloud. So if you have a KodeKloud subscription, your progress will be reflected here. But just to join the cohort and be part of the group and be part of a Discord channel where we are all learning together. So that's absolutely free, so anyone can join.
And all these courses are available on KodeKloud. So if anyone wants to get a KodeKloud subscription, they can check out KodeKloud. And there's also a link below in description.
For your viewers, Nasi, we would like to give a free trial to our platform. So if they go to kodekloud.com/cloudchamp, or if they use a link below, they will be able to get a 1 month free subscription. So, we're happy to offer that for your audience.
Thank you so much. I would definitely use it myself because I'm also preparing for the Kubestronaut title. So if anyone wants to get KodeKloud, the link is in description. You can get this KodeKloud for free for 30 days and you can start practicing it. With that being said, thank you, Mumshad. It was great having you. And I hope our audience will enjoy this insightful conversation about Kubernetes, DevOps, AI, and everything else. Thank you and have a good day.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.